The multi-generational aspect of the viewpoint and the mission is very important.
Well, it's the Senior Caucus, Susan. It's one generation, right?
Well, our mission is making a better world for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. That's the mission of the caucus. It relates to how we think about issues in the city and how we approach solidarity with other groups that are facing concerns.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We are back on the Wedge Live podcast for, I'm going to call it a harrowing personal story because the people I'm talking to today did a heroic thing. They took over the Minneapolis DFL Senior Caucus. They restored it for the good guys is what I'm saying. I doubt they would characterize it that way. The organizers of Seniors for All, I've got Cara Letofsky, I've got Susan Lynx, Cat Tour Celebrity, Jim Davnie is here, and they are the organizers. You may have heard Senior Caucus had a leadership turnover. All new, am I right about that, guys? All new leadership?
Yep. We swept.
That's correct, John. But I wouldn't say we're the don't get the impression we're the only folks. There was a team effort that developed, and we've got a story to tell about that. But we got to work with some great folks.
So when this vote takes place, there are hundreds of people participating? Is it in person?
It was on Zoom, and both sides, if we want to characterize it that way, did a lot of work to get their people there and to get new members. So the membership of the caucus ballooned from like 250 in January of 24 to like nearly 700 when the vote came around.
That is so many people. That's bigger than like a ward convention in terms of votes.
Yep,
Yes,
bigger
there
than a
were
ward
actually
convention.
there were actually 400 people on the Zoom.
That is a lot of participation. So why did you do it? Why was this necessary to organize a group to come in and elect new leadership for the Senior Caucus?
So, well, I'll kick it off, and then the two of you can tell your part of the story. Really, John, it came after several years of Cara and I together complaining about the Senior Caucus and complaining about how they conducted themselves, the often taking very divisive approaches, tactically at conventions, often being the ones leading in, making a DFL convention that can be a challenging experience for people really miserable because they were drawing it out. They were intentionally trying to set it up to fail and not reach an endorsement. They were often endorsing the most conservative of the candidates, even when that candidate was not really a viable candidate in that ward or that legislative district. And Cara and I complained mightily to each other about kind of the negative impact that the caucus was having at that time. And then we kind of took the opportunity to turn that kvetching into action when Cara and Susan connected at the 2023 Ward 12 convention. And I'll let them tell that part of the story.
What happened there at the Ward 12 convention, it wasn't necessarily the current leadership of the caucus. It was individuals who identified themselves as speaking for the caucus, even though there really hadn't been votes or formal positions taken in many cases. But what happened is that Cara and I didn't know each other, and we met in the hallway of the Ward 12 convention, and we said, we don't like, as seniors, people standing up and using the word seniors to represent us in this way. And we decided that we were going to do something about it.
Yeah, and so I'll just jump in that again, to amplify what Jim was saying, after several elections where we kind of saw this particular perspective, shall I say, on issues that were important to me facing Minneapolis. They were not representing my perspective, especially around like housing and the 2040 plan and public safety. And then it was, again, as mentioned in that Ward 12 convention, I kind of realized that, hey, I'm a senior. I'm in the DFL. Why don't, we could start to show up in a different way and try to change the narrative and what was being represented by the current membership.
Yeah, but then you got to show up to meetings. Like, it's a commitment.
It is a commitment.
Often it is, and this goes for any age, it is the crankiest among us who show up to things and a lot of times are voting, or they're the ones sending emails. Levels of government respond to that crankiness, and you end up having one viewpoint represented, the cranky viewpoint, when some people actually, Susan, want a better world, not only for themselves, but for their families, their children and grandchildren. We're all in this together, right, Susan?
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because the mission is to make a world better for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. And quite often I didn't see that being represented. And, the fact is that ageism hurts seniors and young people alike. We're both made invisible. We're really often characterized as just consumers rather than contributors, or people who have needs rather than contributors. And just that alone sets us up to be more sympathetic to youngsters. But the other thing is, we really can be more powerful if we work together. And I was happy to see, although it took some real work, yes, we had to go to a lot of meetings, and we did endure a certain amount of, I'm just going to say, verbal abuse. Okay, I'm just going to say it. But I was also very happy to see that this idea of working with more of an intergenerational approach and appreciating them, when we invested one generation, we make everything better. It came to fruit last year when the Senior Caucus local chapter endorsed the Minneapolis school funding ballot question. And it was endorsed by a good vote. And I don't know, if we hadn't brought it up, I don't know if it ever would have been considered. So we're making progress there, but yes, that's very important to me. Thanks, John.
Were any of you accused of being infiltrators? Maybe you're not old enough to be in the Senior Caucus. Why are you here? Who paid you? Who paid you to be here?
Definitely, we were called infiltrators, and then all the other words that people have probably thrown at you as well.
I don't think anybody accused us of not being old enough.
Yeah.
But infiltrators, yes.
There's a lot of that. Like, you are not legitimate enough to be participating in this process. I hear that so much. It's like, maybe we just disagree, and maybe I'm not paid off. Maybe we just disagree. There's a lot of
right, exactly.
things like that. Susan, were you subject to any verbal abuse? What happened to you?
Well, I think that it was generalized for the most part as sort of that, who are these people, who are these newcomers? And then it became a little more specific later on that somehow we are infiltrators from a specific other group. And I'll tell you, John, any conversation about who belongs and who doesn't belong weakens us all. And there's no, I don't really even like to engage in justifying myself about that. But yes, I'm 73. Yes, I'm in the DFL. Yes, but we need to look at what that dynamic of conversation does. It starts having people point fingers at each other, have to justify, instead of doing the work that we need to do now, especially to oppose these attacks locally and nationally on our communities.
What issues are important to Minneapolis seniors? Because I've been led to believe, based on the past couple of elections worth of endorsements and candidate questionnaires from the Senior Caucus, that it is parking. Parking is the top issue for Minneapolis seniors. Is that correct?
Oh, interesting. because I thought it was more police and stopping bike lanes.
Yeah, those
But in
two.
any case,
those two.
it's interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just like how our involvement kind of ramped up. So after we decided that we wanted to change the perspective of the Minneapolis area DFL Senior Caucus, we started attending meetings, and then it was just the three of us. We're just going to attend meetings and see how things are going in there, and then started to tell other people, and it was really amazing to me, speaking for myself, to see other people were like, yeah, I want to be part of that. Yeah, I see the same problem you do. And then it just kind of grew from there. We had people get involved in what we then called, or started to call Seniors for All, after playing around with a couple other titles that we won't mention here. And people who were organizers and people who wanted to see, who were motivated by things different than what we were motivated by. Right? And we had to build a sense of commonality, so we created some shared values. I mean, it was, I don't know. I mean, as far as meetings go, it was like the only set of non-toxic meetings that we've ever been at. So then we kind of moved that group into the Minneapolis area DFL Senior Caucus, and Susan and I jumped in with both feet into the last year's screening process. And Jim can talk about his work to try to get more transparency in that body. And so people were just kind of interested in joining us and being along with us for the ride.
This incredible amount of people. How did you get so many people involved?
We had a couple of very skilled and experienced organizers that kind of created a framework for us. Kind of like, here's how you do it. Go talk to people. Identify 5 people. Or whatever, 10 people that you're going to go talk to and tell them about what we're doing and get them involved.
And has it become like a social thing? Were there a lot of social events you held, or have you made a lot of friends and this organizing has become like, well, this is now my new friend group and I hang out with these people all the time? What's the social aspect here?
There's certainly some of that. As Susan said, she and Cara didn't know each other before the 2023 Ward 12 convention. I didn't know Susan either. There's a group of folks who are now very active on these issues and in this organization that didn't know each other. And it's all about, to Cara's point, exploring each other's networks. I know this person, I'll talk to them. This other person will host a house party and invite 10 of their friends. It really was classic organizing skills being brought to the table, with a couple with Pam and Mark, who are really sharp, deeply experienced organizers. The thing that struck me was the momentum we discovered. As Cara said, the people who were looking for a place to be active, who were looking for a progressive vision for the city, who instinctively held this multi-generational sort of viewpoint and didn't have a place within the DFL, and we're looking for a place to be active, particularly since January 20th. And we were able to provide that and support them in getting involved.
So when I see a group of older people at a convention, like in a big group, I always assume that must be Faith in Minnesota. Like, there is a tradition of seniors not being the cranky people in local politics, but like the powerful progressive interest group, I think, from the Faith in Minnesota side. Senior Caucus has traditionally been like the counterpoint to that, but I don't know. There's like a deep mine of progressive activism among Minneapolis seniors, I think, Susan.
Yes, I think that what Jim said about the momentum that we discovered, I even go farther and say it's an unmet need, a big unmet need for a welcoming, progressive political home for seniors that helps to really mobilize people. And the other thing that I think was a secret to our organizing success was we really didn't do a lot of socializing that much in our meetings, but they were fun.
Right.
And they were fun. And people, there was an energy that everybody brought, and an acceptance that we didn't all agree. We already knew we didn't all agree. And it just became a really nourishing source of activating energy, but again, it was coming from an unmet need.
What are those points of disagreement? What do we disagree on?
Well, I don't think everybody sees everything exactly the same. So, for example, I think there's ranges within the Seniors for All group, and within the Minneapolis area local chapter of the Senior Caucus, of sort of how do you view the best way to get to the things that we want? Is it so it's somebody more oriented towards sort of status quo capitalism, but let's regulate it so it's more humane? Or is somebody more on the side of like, let's really organize unions and workers and push that power? Do you know what I'm saying? There's a big range, but we all agree on protecting our public institutions, protecting our benefits, and that seniors should be visible and that we're not a monolith. That's one thing we do agree on. We're not a monolith. Does that make sense, Cara and Jim, how I characterize that?
I think so. We haven't talked that much about issues within the Seniors for All side of this operation. But our involvement in the local caucus, especially the screening committee, we've developed a new set of questionnaires for candidates for this year's cycle. The way we did that is that the screening committee broke up into smaller, equally divided groups. One dealt with like the mayor's questions, one dealt with the city council questions. So then we had to like work together, right, to come up with these questions. So John, you mentioned previous questionnaires you've seen kind of highlight, calling bike lanes in front of a senior's home discriminatory and things like that, right? But we had to like hammer out some language that we all agreed upon. And so I think the issues, you asked about the issues, and I think they're kind of the issues that everybody cares about, right? Housing, including affordable housing, public safety, encampments. How do we build a city where everybody has mobility? How do we protect our city from the cuts that are going to come down from the federal government? Like things like that.
Is there more to say about how you did it? Have we covered all of that?
I think we do have to credit some of the leadership of the Senior Caucus when we arrived on some openness to our involvement and responsiveness. So one of the pieces that was a challenge, I think, with the Senior Caucus historically was you couldn't quite figure out how they operated, how decisions were made, what was just the structure and process of an organization that you would expect as a member to see minutes from the last meeting at the next meeting and a treasurer's report and things like that weren't happening. And so some of us started pressing on those issues. How do you define the organization? How do you move issues through? How do you structure things? And, to their credit, the existing leadership at that time was responsive and came forward with a policy and procedure manual to kind of lift those things up so more people could be involved because they could see how to engage. It still proved to be controversial with some of the members of the Senior Caucus, but we worked with them collegially and got some improvements in just process and operating, trying to make it a more welcoming place for a variety of viewpoints and a variety of people by having things be clearer and cleaner and more accessible.
And just one point on that, John. To me, that speaks to kind of a inside strategy and an outside strategy, right? On the one hand, we were showing up, we were volunteering to be part of just the mechanisms of the way the caucus worked, but we were also, kind of talking to our friends over here on the side and building that movement for when the vote happened.
So you will be endorsing candidates this year?
Yeah, it's a little tricky. We don't, because we are a local chapter of a state entity, we don't get to directly endorse. So we recommend for endorsement to the state. And just that process is quite long because there's a lot of meetings. So we don't have time to do city council. So if anybody on the city council is listening to this, we are collecting questionnaires that we want to then share with the public in terms of being a public education around what these candidates think. And then, but we will have time to process in screenings in all the other races. So for mayor, park board, and board of estimate and taxation.
Do you feel like you're going to be able to keep this energy going? This is a thing you can stick with, because a lot of organizing efforts, you come to the end and you win, and then it fades away a little bit. Like you lose your drive to continue. Or you're going to stay
Right.
involved with the senior caucus. You're going to keep all of these people involved.
I think Donald Trump is providing plenty of motivation right now. So, for instance, where the local chapter is involved with the state caucus on creating a April 30th rally in opposition to the threats against Social Security and Medicare, classic senior issues, but also veterans benefits and Medicaid, because these are all ways that we care for each other as a society, and they're all under threat from the Trump administration. So you see a little bit of that multi-generational thing. You see a little bit of that, what I call intentional solidarity. It's coming from a senior lens, and it's seniors who are doing the organizing. But I think the Trump administration will provide a fair amount of motivation for people to use their status and hopefully the Minneapolis area DFL Senior Caucus as a platform to push back and to advocate for a better country than we're getting right now.
So that event is on, you said April 30th, which is the 100th day of the Trump administration. And what's the title that somebody came up with? The 100 Days of Destruction or something like that. So that should be fun to make some signs about. But I did also want to call attention to the mayoral forum. I don't know when this is going to be, when this podcast is going to be released, but on Thursday we're going to be doing a mayoral candidate forum at Sabathani, and we have over 300 people who have registered already. And again, just kind of using activation and mobilization attitude towards our work. The idea is that we'll create opportunities for people to get involved and stay involved.
Thursday the 10th.
Yes,
right?
April 10th for the mayoral forum at Sabathani, April 30th for the 100 Days of Destruction rally, which will be held at the Veterans Service Building on the Capitol Mall in St. Paul. So it's kind of the opposite end of the mall from the Capitol, but a very important symbol of the services that we as a state and a nation provide veterans that are under threat. And that'll be an afternoon thing, probably like a 2 to 4 time slot.
Susan, do you want to follow up on any of those?
I wanted to go back to your question about maintaining the momentum and the energy. Right. For one thing, I talked about the unmet need, and Cara and Jim have talked about the momentum. That is still very much alive with the people that have come in and have been very interested. And the way that we're going to keep that going, partly Trump is fueling that fire all the time, but the way we're going to keep that going is that seniors have a lot of skills and a lot of experience, and especially if they're retired, but not only if they're retired. A lot of people really are looking for, in my stage of life, what am I giving to the future, and how do I want to go out? And when we ask people, there are so many experts in so many areas in our caucus that if we're just saying, well, hey, this issue is something that matters, and they're glomming onto it already. And so I think that there is this movement already, there's momentum, and by giving people a chance to use the skills and the energy they have, and maybe in a different, more free way than they could when they were working, I think that's going to really keep it going. And so is everybody going to come to every meeting and do everything? No, but we're going to keep moving forward.
John, the way I've put it is, for your listeners who don't know, Cara and I are married, have been for a while, and we've got 2 young adult children, neither of whom live in Minneapolis. And we want our kids to move back to Minneapolis at some point. which means Minneapolis has to be a place that young people want to be. And so we can't just look at Minneapolis issues through a narrow lens of how does this impact someone who's 60 or older. We have to think about it in a multi-generational way and help play a role, to Susan's point, of bringing our experience and our perspective, but towards a multi-generational perspective that helps build a city where our children are going to want to move back.
So it's an election year, and I think I want to go one by one and have each of you say what you think the question is this year. Maybe it's something you would want to ask a candidate for city council or mayor. What would you want to ask, or what are you thinking about as you go in to vote?
Given the attacks that we're seeing, both, political and law enforcement attacks, as well as the huge budget withdrawals, how are we, with your leadership, now I'm asking the question of a candidate, how are we, with your leadership, going to continue to protect those most vulnerable and be able to still be able to vote the next time we want to vote? What will you do for those two areas?
Cara?
I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I worked for R.T. Ryback during the Tina Smith era. We just had relationships with all the council members, right? You could agree with the council member on one thing and disagree with them on another thing, but there was not kind of name calling or group outing kind of thing. And so my biggest issue in this campaign is, how are you going to work with the city council and break up this kind of false partisanship that we're feeling these days?
Jim?
I'm looking for a candidate who will tone down the drama at City Hall. We've had the last 8 years kind of a revolving door of staff coming in and out, and controversies and fraud and all these things. And my belief is folks mostly want government to just function. And the city of Minneapolis hasn't been functioning well the last 8 years. And I'd like to find somebody who can just focus on the job, decrease the drama, deliver the services.
Cara, since you're a former insider, what do you think about the new government structure? As you've mentioned the staff turnover, and somebody mentioned the corruption that it seems to be increased a little bit. I don't know if it's just because I have a bias against the mayor, but it was sold. The government restructuring was sold as, well, department leaders hate this. Oh, it's so inefficient. Got to worry about the 13 bosses. And it's not working great from my outside perspective. How did it work before? Do you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts are really only in the context of the current mayor, right? And the I don't know. Somebody was writing once about finally the city of Minneapolis gets to have a strong mayor system, and we get kind of the whiniest mayor that we've had. So I'm sorry, I don't really know it. I have a lot of faith and respect for Margaret Anderson Kelleher to sort of get it right in there, and appreciate some of the other leaders that the mayor has in positions in the city. But I just think the finger pointing is not great.
How does someone get involved with the DFL Senior Caucus? We've talked about some events coming up.
Well, I think showing up to the events is a great place to start. Check out our there's a website, Minneapolis. Is it Minneapolis DFL Seniors?
Yes.
They can find it there.
.org.
.org, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Susan Lynx, Cara Letofsky, Jim Davnie, the new Minneapolis DFL Senior Caucus. Thank you for telling your harrowing personal story to me today. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going going on today?
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now, 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 right now.